Good morning. Spot on, if we can call the meeting to order. I have the approval of minutes, please, from the October 26th meeting.
Move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? They carry. We have the committee work plan, item 2. I'm not sure if there are any questions on that work plan, or is there anything that you need to say, Ron?
Yes, sir. There will be an addition to the committee work plan. That is, beginning in December, we will have quarterly updates on MWDBE participation added to the book.
I would also say that I am working with Ron and Linda and the team to be able to provide a greater clarity to the materials that are coming to the committee. And to be able to use statistical information that comes here in a way that I think can help us to highlight areas that are both going well and areas of concern. So that is a process underway, and hopefully within the next few months, consistent with our greater effort on transparency, we will be bringing that to CPOC as well. Item 3 is a review of the CPOC charter. This item, as a general matter, we have been reviewing, as we are required to on an annual basis, the charters for each of the committees. It's intended to be able to put forth a clear basis of working between the committee and the staff to outline the respective roles and responsibilities of both parties, and to be clear about the information that the committee needs to perform its duty. As we talked last week, and certainly having been involved in the establishment of this committee back in the 1980s, this committee is in fact special within the MTA in the point that the independent engineer works for the committee, is facilitated by the staff of the MTA, but the independent engineer works technically for the committee of this committee of the board of directors, and is the only place in which that is the case. I would be happy to take any questions on the charter as it's been proposed.
I'll move it.
In favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And then we have the update on commitments and completions. This is one of the areas, as I said, that we are seeking to bring greater clarity to this. Is there anything that you want to highlight, Ron or Linda?
We are in the process, and we are in the process, and some of the questions that you asked in terms of what has slipped since the past month will be included in this report. We will be upgrading the tables to reflect a comparison with the original plan next month. So we're in the process of it, and we've made some adjustments this month, which I'll report on.
So are you doing something on this now, or?
Yes.
Okay, your report. Go.
Okay. MTA committed $4.25 billion through October. This is 86% of the planned commitments. This total includes the value of project commitments, some of which exceed their budgeted value. Next month's report will be changed to include a measure of budgeted commitments against budgeted commitment goals. New York City Transit committed $1.76 billion, or 71% of its plan. This is due to delay in the purchase of 90 low-floor CNG buses for $62 million until December, delay in the purchase of 23 division cars for Flushing and for Flushing CBTC for $75 million until January 2010, and delay in award of Flushing CBTC for $348 million until February 2010. An additional $484 million has slipped to 2010. Beyond that, Long Island Railroad committed $306 million and 95% of its plan. Metro North committed $212 million to 75% of its plan due to delayed award of the Bronx station capacity improvements for $9 million until November. Final commitments for Harlem Hudson Line power improvements for $42 million, drainage and undercutting program for $7 million, and signal replacement for $25 million until December. In addition, $8 million is slipped into 2010. Capital Construction committed $1.89 billion, or 117% of its plan. This is due to actual commitments exceeding plan amount, more than offsetting delay in award of Northern Boulevard Crossing for $61 million until November. Bridges and Tunnels committed $19 million, or 16% of its plan. This is due to delay in award of the Bronx Whitestone concrete anchorage repairs for $7 million until November, rehab of RFK Bridge Building 104 for $67 million until December, and the Queens Midtown Tunnel Building rehab for $11 million until 2010. MTA Bus has committed $24 million, or 37% of its plan. This is mostly due to delay in award of the new roof ventilation system at Baisley Park for $7 million until December, and the balance of projects for $35 million slipped into 2010. MTA PD has committed $1.6 million, or 16% of its plan. This is due to delayed commitment of the phased public radio design for $5.5 million and the K-9 facility acquisition for $2.5 million until 2010. As you see from these reports, some projects are expected to move into 2010. Next month's commitment report will show all end-of-year commitments expected to slip into 2010. Completions. MTA completed $3.17 billion through October. This is 102% of the plan completions. This reflects some actual completions which have exceeded their budget. Next month's report will be changed to reflect the completions at the project budgeted amount against planned budgeted completions. New York City Transit completed $1.61 billion, or 89% of its plan. This is due to delayed completion of Sonnet ATMA for $201 million to be determined. The total value of delayed commitments was partially offset by accelerated R160 purchase acceptance. Long Island Road completed $181 million, or 79% of its plan. This is due to delayed completion of Atlantic Terminal for $101 million until November. Metro North completed $443 million, or 503% of its plan. This is due to advanced completion for the Harmon Shop Replacement Program for $357 million, offsetting delayed completion of GCT vital processes for $7 million until March of 2010. Capital Construction completed $506 million, or 92% of its plan. Bridges and Tunnels completed $428 million, or 100% of its plan.
Questions?
Just a comment, Ron. These materials show items that have slipped for various reasons, but it's not always spelled out the reasons in this book, and I hope that's one of the improvements you're going to make. You explained some of them verbally just now, and some of them we can see with the A's and the B's and the columns, but there's some that don't say why they're delayed.
Right. We had tried to, there was a lot of discussion on that very question, and what happens when the slip first occurs, we footnote it, and then we drop the footnote in subsequent months. But that, you're right, that leads to confusion. So we will take that into consideration also. We will address that. Thank you.
I don't know that this report, in the way we're doing it, is meeting anyone's interest right now. So, I think Ron and Linda have taken that on board. I think I would encourage the members of the board and the members of this committee to please interact with them now, because what I don't want to see us do is to change this, but to change it in a way that doesn't fully meet the needs. Among the points that Ron made that we've been in discussion with is, ironically, you can have better performance if you are overrunning your budgets right now, and that's certainly not the way that we want to see this actually come across. So there are things in here that are perhaps giving misleading views of some of that. I don't know how material they are, but we'll see what that's the case. I think it's also the case that we are seeking to use the estimate at completion to reflect what we believe is the estimate for a project at completion, and the difference between that and the budget, in fact, represents the amount of headroom we have to be able to deal with the unforeseen circumstances. The way we're doing our reporting right now does not give us the opportunity to be able to see that, and therefore essentially keeps us, as well as the public, in the dark about that type of factor. So these are things that Ron is looking at and trying to be clear about. The whole presentation of the material can be clear, and clearly I think if that happens, then the type of report that Ron was just able to give, highlighting areas of interest to us, would be much easier to be able to do. But I do encourage that discussion right now because we are working on it at this time. Mark?
I appreciate the point and address that you're planning to address the point on you can hit the numbers, but without having done the work that you were hoping to have done, so that performance distinction, I think, is helpful. I don't know how best to do this, but delays. Well, the fact of the matter is that a plan is an authorization to do work. And so the plan is absolutely the best you're ever going to come out with if everything happens to hit out exactly on schedule. And it's not going to, and it probably shouldn't, as a matter of fact, because things will come up, and if you're addressing them well, it may well be that spending more time is going to get you a better product for a better price than just, cramming it through. And so as you describe the fact that a certain number of things are not going to happen as early as they were authorized to happen, but will happen, there's some of it's probably reasonable and some of it's less reasonable. And I don't know exactly how to get at that, but if you were able to express some sense of your judgment on the delays and, why and, what caused it, good, bad, indifferent, and how are you using the time as a practical matter? That'd be helpful. Obviously, you can get so much into the grass blades that everybody falls asleep, including yourself, but some element of that would be helpful.
This is actually just to praise staff for a minute. There's a lot of material in here when you look at these charts and then you look at the backup. It certainly gives you a sense of the slippage. I agree about having greater clarity about the reasons why things have slipped or changed in price. But I just had one technical question, and I'm forgetting this, but is the forecast actual the same thing as the estimated completion, or is that a different concept? On each one of the charts where we have the budget, we've got a goal, and then we have a forecast. Is that forecast synonymous with estimated completion, or are they different concepts?
In terms of the commitment table, it's a forecast of what the project will cost when it is bid and awarded,
Okay.
and it includes, of course, the third party and all the support costs. So that's the latest forecast of what the budget of that project will be. In terms of completions, however, that number is updated. It's the estimate at completion.
So forecast actual in the completion section is estimate at completion? Correct. Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions on this item?
One last thing.
Sure.
Ron, on the New York City Transit page, for instance, there's kind of a dichotomy because in one of the items, for instance, rehab 5 West End Line stations or rehab 3 Rockaway Park branch stations, you don't actually tell people what the stations are anywhere. Yet, down just a little bit on rehab 5 Pelham stations, you do tell what stations they are. So if we could be a little more consistent on that, it would be great. Thanks.
Ron, are you going to proceed to the funding section? Were you going to talk about funding at all? No.
No, that was included in terms of information, in terms of these charts. Right, correct. We added that a few months back in terms of your charter compliance, since CPOC looks at funding. That's information there. There's no commentary on it unless you'd like, some questions.
Is there any sort of a status report on the federal portion of our funding?
Okay. We have 2 in-depth items scheduled for discussion at the committee today. The first, are we doing buses first? Is that the intent? Okay. So the first would be to discuss the bus procurement update and provide an opportunity for discussion about our forward look in terms of bus purchases. How are we handling this one?
Joe Smith is unavailable to be here today, so I'll be filling in for him. My name is John Kivlahan. I'm the Chief Budget and Performance Officer for the 3 buses agencies. My presentation today will focus on the status of New York City Transit's bus procurement plans. Since we're responsible for managing bus contracts that cover MTA Bus as well as New York City Transit. I will also discuss the status of the bus procurements as they relate to MTA Bus. The presentation will cover the state of the remaining bus buys in the 2005-2009 program and the planned procurements over the 2010-14 period. I will also update you on the demonstration customer information system along the 34th Street corridor in Manhattan. These projects are the active and remaining bus buys in the existing 05-09 capital programs for both the TA and MTA Bus. This includes 1,166 buses for the Transit Authority and 140 buses for MTA Bus. Next, I want to tell you about the status of each of these. The first contract to discuss is the hybrid electric next generation bus. This contract is for 745 buses for the Transit Authority and 105 buses for MTA Bus. The manufacturer, Orion, is behind by 21 buses, and we are holding back approximately $1.6 million in liquidated damages to date. The good news is that Orion is making up for lost time, and we believe they will deliver all buses by the contractual date of March 2010. This chart shows that the manufacturer has nearly caught up. The schedule called for the Transit Authority to receive 582 buses by the end of October, and we have received 561. For MTA
Excuse me, quick question. The liquidated damages, if they get back on schedule, do you give that back to them?
No, I believe that is held.
That's a permanent?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I'll confirm that for you, though.
I think that sometime recently we were talking about this question of how rapidly you have to replace the battery
On the hybrid buses.
on the hybrid buses. Is that something that is endemic with this group of buses as well, or is it something that we're moving ahead better on, we hope?
The next generation buses include the next model of battery, which is the lithium-ion battery, which are expected to last approximately 6 years, only requiring one replacement. The batteries we're having the problem with that you're referencing are on the previous generation bus, where they were lasting between 2 and 3 years.
So are the ones we're talking about next generation?
Yes, they are.
Thanks.
John, just one last quick question. I'm sorry. Have we had chronic delivery problems with Orion, or is this out of the ordinary?
I think with all bus manufacturers, we tend to have delays. As we find problems during the manufacturing process, we'll slow down or stop the production line. But I think being behind 21 buses is fairly insignificant at this point. It was as high as 100 buses, and they've made a big effort to try to get back online.
So you have confidence in that March date?
Yes. In total, we've received 640 of the 850 buses as of October 30th. These buses have already been deployed in all divisions. The next contract to discuss is the Design Line Turbine Engine Hybrid Bus. This contract was awarded in November 2008. We are currently awaiting the results of the shaker table test, but expect no major issues. All buses should be delivered by the end of 2010.
Can you describe the shaker table test, because those words don't convey a lot?
It simulates
Or they might.
12 years of service on New York City roads. And it does it over a very short period of time. They literally shake the bus on a table, which will simulate driving for 12 years. So it gives us
Are the wheels spinning while you do this, or is it just shaking up the suspension?
I believe the wheels are spinning, but I'll double check that for you. It's supposed to give us a projection of how the bus will handle 12 years in service, structurally.
And you achieve that how fast?
I believe it's a month or two, but
Does there have to be somebody in the bus while you're doing this?
I don't believe so.
Sir, there's one of these running on 42nd Street now?
That's correct.
Yeah, this bus is amazing in that it doesn't jerk at all.
Yeah.
I rode it with Joe, and I was amazed that you don't feel it starting. So, I hope everything else holds up. It's a great bus if it does.
It's as quiet as a tomb, too. It's
Yeah,
a
it is.
spectacular
And
bus.
I understand that has its own problems. It may have to make some sound for the hearing impaired
Yes, the
community,
hearing
but-
impaired. But it's a beautiful, but this is the one that it looks like it's got a smile on its face. We'll see how it feels after our duty cycle, but it's a great-looking,
After
great
12 years on
performing
New York
bus.
City streets, it may not be smiling. You know?
Mark, that shaker table has nothing on Madison Avenue and the ruts.
Okay, next, we awarded a contract in May of 2009 to get a test fleet of up to 90 articulated buses from Nova. Our current articulated fleet is comprised of only one manufacturer. Adding this manufacturer's Artic buses to our fleet will promote competition.
That one had 3 doors. Did you see that?
Additionally, as our first 3-door, low-floor articulated bus, we'll be using them in SBS service. We expect to get all buses by mid-2010 in plenty of time for the rollout of SBS for the M15 route on 1st and 2nd Avenues in Manhattan, which is planned to begin by the fall of 2010. The M15 will need about 55 buses. The remaining buses will replace the high-floor Artics currently operating on the BX12 route in the Bronx.
Does the low floor actually continue through the hinge?
I have to check that for you. I believe it does, and comes back. It goes up and comes back down in the rear of the bus until the rear axle where it goes up.
John, we've had a rather checkered history with our articulated buses, haven't we? They haven't necessarily been all that we've desired. Was it the manufacturer, and do we think that this will be a better quality bus, or is it simply, you know, the vicissitudes of our streets and duty cycle?
I think a lot of it has to do with our duty cycle in New York being much more difficult than any other duty cycle in North America. The articulated buses now that we have, the New Flyer articulated buses, are just reaching their 12th year, and they are literally struggling to get there.
I think the design of this bus in terms of its structure is very similar to a Volvo bus operating in Europe, right?
It is.
I mean, that's essentially what that is, right?
I believe Volvo, in fact, owns Novos.
Right. So I mean, it's. I think to the credit of New York City Transit, I think one of the great difficulties has been getting the European manufacturers to want to build buses here, and I think this is about Volvo bringing its designs over here, where 3-door buses have been operating very successfully in other environments. Is that?
That is correct.
Okay.
Next are compressed natural gas buses. We are currently preparing to award a contract in the next month or two for 135 CNG buses, 90 for the Transit Authority and 45 for MTA Bus. We are pursuing the purchase of CNG buses in order to replace CNG buses that are more than 12 years old and to increase the CNG local bus fleet at existing CNG-compatible depots. This takes advantage of the existing infrastructure already in place to support CNG operations, specifically the fueling and gas detection systems. Also, maintaining a diverse fleet, including CNG buses, will hedge against volatile fuel prices. This also includes incentives such as the CNG federal excise tax rebate. While the tax rebate is scheduled to expire on December 31st of this year, it is expected to be extended. Furthermore, CNG buses have already met the 2010 EPA emission standards. All buses will be required to have similar emission profiles by the time 2010 EPA regulations take effect.
Am I correct that those are low-floor buses as well?
Yes, they are.
So
Yes.
So is it our standard now that all buses being purchased are low-floor buses? Is that, with the exception of the coaches that were purchased for Express, but all the local buses are low-floor buses?
That is correct.
And the choice between CNG, hybrid, and clean diesel, for example, how do we make that choice?
We are right now going through an extensive exercise, as we discussed last week, to do a cost-benefit analysis for each model bus, looking at all the factors, the original purchase price, the fuel costs or estimated fuel costs it will take, the maintenance costs, to determine what from a cost point of view would be the best bus to purchase. Right now our strategy has been of late to maintain diversity. So we're working on those analyses now, as well as the performance standards that we see with each model bus.
But for the purposes of the committee, we're taking a step back to just ensure that we have the analytical basis for the decisions that we're making, and that we're not going with a flavor because it fits certain goals outside of what we may be able to do in terms of performance and cost and other things of that nature. And I think it's the type of information that should come back for a discussion at this committee and provide us with the fact foundation to be able to look forward. And you'll see as we go forward with this discussion, critically important for us to do because buses are an extremely large part of the upcoming capital program. We have many bus purchases coming up at that time.
Jay, not wanting to anticipate what may come from that, but would there be a significant retrofit cost to convert the terminals and the fueling systems that currently take care of the CNG, and to put that back to move it over to a low sulfur diesel?
The majority of our existing facilities that are CNG capable are also diesel capable. The exception would actually be on Long Island, where they solely operate CNG buses right now.
Thank you.
We have flexibility. How we choose to use it is up to us.
Correct.
I'm sorry. In fact, I mean, isn't it a lot easier to just run a diesel fueling facility? Don't you just lose a lot of stuff that you have to have in order to do the compressed natural gas?
The most basic, simple system would be diesel.
Yeah.
The next capital program includes the purchase of 2,480 buses for New York City Transit at a cost of nearly $2 billion. These buses are required mostly to meet replacement needs, primarily the result of the tremendous increase in fleet size during the 1990s. We have found that after 12 years, it is more cost-effective to replace a bus than to rehabilitate a bus, especially given that the bus's performance gets significantly worse after 12 years. I'll discuss this in more detail in just a minute, but I want to note that currently 22% of the buses at the Transit Authority are over 12 years old, as well as 15% at MTA Bus and 11% at Long Island Bus. The program for MTA Bus calls for approximately 290 buses to be procured at a cost of $212 million. As you can see, the lion's share, 91%, of bus purchases are for replacements. But also 118 RTICs are to implement SBS service on 4 more routes in addition to the BX-12 and the M15 currently funded by the 2005-2009 program. Additionally, 253 RTICs are to cover high-volume routes that currently use 40-foot standard buses. So why buy buses? There is no doubt that newer buses perform better in service. There is an unbelievable performance difference between the first 2 years of a bus versus a bus that is 12 years old. And therefore, we need to buy new buses to replace poor performers, which are the buses at the end of their useful life. The 12-year mark is an industry standard, but even that is a push for New York City given our duty cycles. Also, newer, more environmentally friendly buses using advanced technologies further reduce fleet emissions, especially given the 2010 EPA requirements. Another major reason to buy buses is to convert high-volume routes to articulated buses. The ratio is 4 articulated buses replace 5 standard buses, so it can save 20% in bus operator costs. And even when you take into consideration the price differential of the cost of the bus and the increased maintenance requirements of an articulated bus, the net present value saves us an average of almost $36,000 per bus per year. You can see by this pie chart that our plan calls for the articulated fleet to increase to 22% with a corresponding decrease in the standard 40-foot fleet. This chart shows the number of buses that are 12 years old, and that they will increase in 2011 before our planned purchases begin to reduce that number. Our goal is to have no buses over 12 years old in service, primarily because of their poor performance and impact on our customers. In 2015, because of our leveling plan, as well as funding constraints, we will have approximately 200 buses over age, significantly less than where we are today. This shows our current average fleet age and the planned projections through 2015. 6 years is our goal. Because of the duty cycles and stresses on our fleet, MDBF gets worse over time. We control it by maintaining buses on a proactive basis as much as possible, and we have new initiatives in place to improve our ability to identify problems before they happen. But even with our overhaul and preventative maintenance programs, bus performance declines with age, and it declines significantly after 12 years. Buying buses at the 12-year mark is crucial if we are to continue providing customers with reliable service.
Is the 12-year mark we want to be, or is that just defaulting to the national standard?
It's where we want to be, and we're currently evaluating, as I mentioned before, the cost-benefit analysis of what type of bus to purchase is what's the appropriate life cycle of that bus. For example, the Arctics that are struggling to make it to 12 years, there may be more benefit to replace those buses prior to 12 years. So we're taking a look at the whole thing and taking a kind of a step back, as the chairman mentioned, and re-looking at the entire program.
Yeah, I think that makes sense because it's you've got different flavors in the fleet,
Right.
and those lines will cross someplace, not necessarily on a national standard, really.
If you actually thought that you had the technology down, or I don't know if even that is a given. I mean, have you looked at what it would take to reconstruct a bus so that you would basically give it back a further useful life? The mean distance between failures and the fact that it just goes up regardless of what you do on maintenance can't be true. If you had an infinite amount of money to throw at the bus, you could probably keep it new forever if you were willing to kill yourself and waste the money.
What I base that comment on is not a complete rebuild of a bus. To be honest with you, I'd have to speak with the engineers to see if that would even make sense. What I'm basing it on is we have done in the past, because we're forced into a position of keeping a bus beyond 12 years. We've invested anywhere between $25,000 and $50,000 in the vehicle to keep it going until we can get replacements in. In those cases, we have seen performance decline even with the investment.
Yeah, if I could, Mark, the primary problem is structural. The old London double-deckers in the early 50s were built with a chassis that I think lasted, in many cases, 35, 40 years. Bus manufacturers in the United States have not built even close to that standard. As was said earlier, they kind of build to 12 years for the nation as a whole. And given New York City's duty cycle on that structure, we're really lucky to, in many cases, make 12 years, and it involves extensive bulkhead repair and other structural repair just to keep the bus going. But the basic theory is correct. I mean, if you built a chassis that would last forever, then all you have to do is change out the engine and the transmission as that becomes necessary, and the bus would keep rolling. That's just not what's in the market at this point in time.
Thank you.
Conscious of the clock, so we should try and move quickly through the rest.
The bottom line on this graph shows MDBF for buses greater than 12 years. For September, it was 3,300, or 20% worse than the total average fleet, which was 4,100. You can see how the older buses pulls down the average. And if you look at the top line for buses less than 2 years old, you can see how they improve overall performance.
Let me make one other comment to the committee. When we talked about this presentation, when I spoke to Joe about it, in essence, we're talking about a bus purchase of 2,000 some odd buses in the next capital program. We should understand what the projection is and effectively what the service level agreement is from what we should be expecting is going to happen with MDBF going forward. These charts all stop where we are today. But in essence, what we need to do is to frame that expectation about what we think is happening and be able to measure our actual performance against that. And we haven't done that yet. So Joe is in the process of doing that as well. Equally, as we bring in new buses that require different maintenance, we should frame our operating cost perspective as well. Hopefully lower, but we should frame that as well. But we're making a major change to the bus fleet in a relatively short period of time, and this is the place in which we should be able to look forward, not just look in the rearview mirror.
This is the MDBF trend for our ticks. MDBF for buses over 12 years was 1,500 miles in September versus a fleet average of 23, a 35% reduction. You can see a similar chart for express buses. The top line there just represents only 19 buses in our fleet, but the 1990s, our oldest buses, have an MDBF of 5,200 miles, which is well below the fleet average of 6,400. At this time, I'd like to provide you with a brief overview of the CIS demonstration going on 34th Street. The company that we are currently using to equip our buses with the Intelligent Vehicle Monitoring System is conducting a 6-month test on 30 buses at no cost to transit. This test by Clever Devices will operate through early February. The system includes automatic voice announcements and onboard signage. It also includes customer information signs at 8 bus shelters. Additionally, Clever Devices is providing a link to a Google-enhanced map for supervisors which show the actual location of the bus operator, and the run number. Manhattan Road Control is currently using this system via laptop. There are additional customer enhancements we could consider for the future. Options include allowing customers to get next bus arrival times and service advisories sent directly to their PDAs, and enable internet access to a Google-enhanced map that will display the location of your bus. An RFI is pending that will give other companies the opportunity to demonstrate their product in the same manner as Clever Devices. In addition, 2 vendors, Init and NextBus, have been asked to conduct similar demonstrations. Init has expressed interest in conducting a demonstration on the 50th Street Crosstown corridor. We are awaiting a response from NextBus. Our ultimate goal is to select multiple vendors with a target start date in late 2010 or early 2011, but we are still evaluating our options, the available technologies, and the cost impacts.
This last piece, obviously I've talked a lot about the importance of this type of information. We're working very closely with New York City Transit buses and New York City to be able to come forth with a way to be able to do this. I think what's important in what's being said here is that the focus now is very narrowly, and I think appropriately, on customer information as opposed to a much broader or larger set of goals that you might have. And I think we're trying to stay with the first and foremost issue we have and find the quickest and the best ways to be able to get that out there in a way that we can have confidence. I expect that within a couple of months we'll have a fuller report to the board on this initiative and one that we can discuss at this committee.
That completes my presentation.
Thank you, and we will wish Joe to feel better. Fred, you're up.
Next up is the signals and communications portion.
I'm sorry, how are we doing this? Did we miss an item? I'm sorry, did I miss something?
Mike Polito?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mike.
No problem. This is the first bus procurement program report for the independent engineer. We have found that over this reporting period that the program is proceeding in a satisfactory manner. We have no concerns to report at this time. I do have concerns with respect to another capital project, the Charleston Annex Bus Depot, a concern with respect to the schedule. Slow productivity on the part of the contractor with respect to general construction activities has resulted in a delay to the completion of this project. New York City Transit is forecasting a 5-month delay, which will bring the completion to May of 2010. The independent engineer agrees with that assessment, however, cautions that the commissioning activities, which had originally been slated to take 6 months, are now being squeezed into a 5-month period, and we're recommending that New York City Transit keep the pressure on and assure themselves that they're satisfied with the contractor's plan to complete the commissioning activities and open the bus depot in May. Transit's response, which we find to be satisfactory, is that they're holding executive-level meetings on the site to make sure that productivity of the general construction activities continues at an accelerated pace. They're also holding separate commissioning meetings to make sure that there's an appropriate level of attention on those activities, and they will bring on additional resources as necessary to ensure that the facility is opened in May. Our second area of concern with respect to this project has to do with budget, and that's a two-part concern. The first is the obvious question, is there ample budget remaining given the additional 5 months duration, and New York City Transit has responded that they're taking a look at their estimate at completion in terms of any additional AWOs required, and as well as in-house engineering force account costs. And when they have that information, we'll make comment on that. The second area is, as you may recall from the last time this project was briefed, through agreement with the DEP, New York City Transit is undertaking temporary measures to provide a temporary retention basin to handle the stormwater flow. That will be at a cost of $1.5 million and will result in their ability to open the facility in May of 2010. Our original comment was we suggested a cost-benefit analysis be done as to whether or not it was warranted to spend that $1.5 million on a temporary fix when a permanent fix would be forthcoming later on. And that has essentially been done. The earliest time that the facility could have opened with a permanent stormwater solution would have been January of 2011 at the earliest. So we agree with Transit that the expenditure of the $1.5 million to open up the bus depot in May as opposed to, well, January of 2011 at the earliest is prudent. No other comments for the bus program.
Just one quick question, and I know we want to keep pressing ahead. Just to put this in layperson's terms, the delays by the contractor, were they mostly due to the fact that we've had some rules change on us by DEP and some slowness in obtaining these construction permits, or is there anything going on with the contractor that we need to be concerned about?
The delays were both on the contractor and DEP. He did have some quality issues with his subcontractors that he has addressed, so that there was some slow productivity and quality issues on the contractor. but also DEP did, the approval process was very protracted.
Has the sub been replaced, or?
The sub has been, a new sub has been brought on board in case the existing sub did not perform, but that seems to have done the trick, and everything is in order.
Thank you.
Fred, I think we're now to you.
Okay.
Or to Mark. Let's just to orient for time. We have need. I think there's some material here that is well worth going through, at least quickly, in a public session. We also have the need for an executive session. So I would ask you to please be brief on this, and then that we can go into exec. Okay.
Okay, then I'll introduce Mark Beanstalk. Since Connie Crawford has left us, I've taken on her duties and responsibilities as acting Senior Vice President and Chief Engineer. Mark Beanstalk to my left, who has been the Program Manager for Communications, now takes over responsibilities as Acting Program Officer for Signals and Communications, and he's here today to highlight a couple of the major communication projects for us. Mark?
Thank you. With me today, just to introduce you to two additional people, Len Chacho, who's our Chief of Electronic Maintenance Division Department of Subways. He is the user and maintainer of the projects I'll be speaking about this morning. And Diane Morgenroth from the New York City Transit Law Department is here to prod me if I say anything in open session that should be said in executive session. Yes. Today I will be updating you on three projects: the Sonnet ATM Communications Network System, the ATMB Communications Network. Both Sonnet ATM and ATMB are the networks being deployed to support New York City Transit's communication needs and to provide the transport for service applications, the first of which is the Public Address Customer Information System, or PACIS, for the Subways A Division. As you can see from this illustration, the systems work together to provide information to our customers. Train movement is tracked by the existing wayside signal system and relayed to the ATS system in the Rail Control Center. As you know, ATS has been in service since last year. The ATS system tracks the location of all trains in the A Division and provides schedule and train location data to the PACIS system, which then distributes the train arrival information to passenger stations via the Sonnet ATM Communications Network. The Sonnet portion of the network, with equipment installed at 24 sites, supports all subway stations as well as other major facilities. The Sonnet network consists of 2 core rings and 4 Sonnet edge rings, which are shown in black on the diagram. The ATM network installed under the Sonnet ATM contract supports 177 Subways A Division stations, as well as 10 B Division stations. The stations are grouped geographically into 25 ATM branch loops, which each tie into the Sonnet network at 2 diverse locations. There are 52 additional branch loops being installed under the ATMB contract to connect 281 B Division stations to the Sonnet portion of the network. 2 branch loops are shown on the lower right and left of the diagram for illustration purposes. We have achieved significant progress on the Sonnet ATM contract since our last update. The entire Sonnet network has been placed in beneficial use. 8 out of 25 ATM branch loops are in beneficial use. 7 ATM branch loops have been tested and are awaiting beneficial use declaration. 10 ATM branch loops are currently under test, and all element management systems have been placed in beneficial use. Since our last update, we have completed the following major activities on the ATMB contract. We've replaced all of the obsolete fiber optic cable connectors. The splicing of the new fiber optic cable to the existing fiber cable is 85% complete. 14 out of 27 network management system tests have been completed. All training has been completed. All test procedures have been approved. Ground and electrical testing has been completed at 75 out of the 281 locations. And the first 2 phases of the Dense Wave Division Multiplexing, or DWDM, network enhancement have been completed. This enhancement is needed to support the security projects currently underway. As shown on the risk-informed summary workflow, we anticipate the entire network to be in beneficial use by the middle of 2011. The PACIS project is installing a new PACIS system in 152 A Division stations, which interfaces to the ATS system to provide real-time train arrival information to our customers. Since our last update, we have completed site installation tests at the first group of stations, implemented the multicast design to support live audio at those stations. Speaker and cabinet installation is 80% complete system-wide. CIS, or the Customer Information Screen installation, is 50% complete. And we've tested with live ATS data at the Rail Control Center, both to validate the interface and the transmission of real-time train arrival information to the field. The soft rollout will begin with 3 stations on the Pelham line at the end of the year and then expand to 10 stations. The first 3 stations are Longwood Avenue, East 149th Street, and Brook Avenue, and are identified by the light green arrow on the map. The additional 7 stations along the line are identified by the dark green arrows. As shown on the risk-informed schedule, the remaining stations will be commissioned throughout 2010. We anticipate all stations to be live on the A Division by the end of 2010. The major risks identified during the risk workshop have been mitigated. They're listed here. These projects are very closely integrated. We're coordinating the work between the contracts and managing the shared risks to ensure that they are successful, with the goal of providing real-time information to our customers as soon as possible.
If I can, this is an absolutely critically important program. There is a matter of potential litigation that I think we should discuss. And so rather than take a broad discussion here, if I can have a motion to go into executive session, I would prefer to I'd prefer to do it that way. Okay? In favor? Okay. We go into executive session. Thank you very much.